Okay, it's connected with
I know they had something else with the menorah.
That's what I was saying.
That's not kosher.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start taping. So we thank Jason Lefkowitz for taping with us tonight, and we are hoping there's going to be a live.
Why?
It's going.
Oh God.
It's going to be a live. I'm the only one who shows. You can only see me, right? You can only see me. Don't worry about it.
Let me fix my hair.
This is a live presentation, and we're also recording it here on this. So you may see me moving it around because I have to move the mic in different directions. In any event, we learned tonight El Zecher Nishmas in memory of Mary Heiken Dumont of blessed memory, wonderful member and leader in our community, our congregation for many years, by tremendous devotion and commitment to our congregation, and may her memory be a blessing.
My mother.
Yes, she was very beloved, and she lived right here, next to the shul. Yes. Lovely. So tonight our topic is as follows. Our topic is Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Is it the centerpiece of Judaism? Is it a central idea or a mandate or an obligation within Judaism? So first, we'll need to, in order to answer that question, we're going to need to define what Tikkun Olam is, what it means, what it has meant, how people use it, what people mean by it, what its implications are, and then we can evaluate whether it is or it isn't a central tenet in Judaism. Okay, so firstly, the definition, the words themselves. Many of you are quite familiar, but I want to just make one grammatical point that may be a little bit new to you, and that is the word tikkun means fixing. The word letaken appears in Kohelet. It's a later Hebrew word. And meuvat lo yuchal litkon, things that are broken cannot be fixed. Olam we know is world, but it actually in the classical forms of the Mishnah and Gittin, as we'll see later on the bottom of the page, it appears as tikkun ha'olam, the repair of the world. So literally tikkun olam would translate as the repair of a world, like the different worlds and repair of this one as opposed to another one, which already at the beginning shows us that those who coined the phrase may have lacked a certain sensitivity to Hebrew, which raises a question about the coining of the phrase and the extent to which it's at least the phrasing of it and the term is deeply rooted in Jewish tradition. So we begin there. Don't get too excited yet. I know it's a very emotional topic. Let's go through how people use it, what we're referring to, and then we'll duke it out in a few minutes. Now, the concept. So I'll be borrowing here to some degree from different articles. One is Rabbi J.J. Schachter, a good friend and teacher and mentor from Yeshiva University, and he outlines some of the precepts which Tikkun Olam represents. Again, just in case someone's not completely familiar, generally Tikkun Olam is used as the idea that we have to be partners with God to repair the world, make it a better place, and do stuff out in the world, particularly beyond our own Dalet Amos, our own narrow confines, in order to make the world a better place. Let's see what this implies. So, who would like to read Rabbi Schachter's, I think it's four points here. Who would like to read that for us? Okay. Yeah.
The concept. Rabbi J.J. Schachter. The world it is known to be is not what the world is ultimately meant to be. There is a fundamental disconnect between the real and the ideal.
Number 2.
Human beings are empowered with the capacity to transform the real into the ideal. Not only is this within the purview of God, but human beings are granted by God the capacity to do something about it. Human beings can make a difference.
Number 3.
Not only do human beings have the capacity to make a difference, but it is a part of the religious obligation of Jews to make a difference. Jewish religious tradition expects and requires Jews to be engaged in the effort to bring about this transformation.
4.
This obligation includes bettering the welfare of all people who populate the earth, not only Jews. Of course, the primary responsibility of all Jews is for one another.
So he's going to assume that that your life comes before your your neighbor's life, and that the primacy would go to your own life. He's going to assume that within the concept of Tikkun Olam, that we're going to affirm that our basic obligation is to ourselves, our community, our neighbors, it's our country, but that our obligation includes bettering the world, all peoples, wherever they may be, So we'll get more into the details about that later. But so let's go over the 4 points again. So what's point number 1?
The world is not the way it should be.
If it needs fixing, that means that it's broken. The world is broken. There can be something much better. Here you go. Thank you. Welcome. All right. Number 2. Assumptions of Tikkun Olam number 2. We have the ability to make a difference. God wants us to do something about it. Go ahead. Number 3.
It's not in the power of everyone to make a difference.
It's not in the power. Sorry? It is in the power. Right. Not only, right. It's also an obligation. It's an obligation. Tikkun Olam is not just a concept, but an obligation. No one uses the expression mitzvah. Most people would not say that is a mitzvah, but because there's no verse that says "Thou shalt tikkun olam," but the idea that it's a mandate, it's a charge, okay. And the 4th thing that
we should help everybody first.
That this tikkun applies to all the way out there in the world of the capital W, including perhaps outside our country, outside our community. And again, I don't know if it's embedded in the concept for most people that the assumption is that our community comes first, but certainly for Rabbi J. Schachter, it's a given that within Tikkun Olam, our first mandate is to our own, let's say, to your wife, your children, your community, your city, your country, etc., etc. Okay. Yes.
I have a little bit of an issue with his definition.
Okay.
Because
so this is not the definition of Tikkun Olam, but these are assumptions that Tikkun Olam. Yes. Okay.
He's saying human beings are empowered with the capacity to transform the real into the ideal. I'm not sure that I've ever read a philosopher, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Yoel, who said that we can actually achieve the ideal within this world. The Platonic ideal, something we strive toward. But it's like perfection. And he's saying that in one sentence, he's saying we can transform the real into the ideal. That is, we can achieve some sort of godlike perfection. But then he backs down and says human beings can make a difference, which is not as stark a statement.
Right. So I think Steve's already pointing us in an interesting direction of inquiry within this concept of Tikkun Olam. That, wait a second, are we trying to actually heal the whole world such that we're going to achieve this? We can do it. We're gonna eradicate poverty. I think sometimes you hear that type of talk among people who are do-gooders, that we're going to eradicate poverty, war on poverty. We're not going to rest until every mother has a home, hot supper for the children. And you hear other people saying, make the world a better place. Tikkun Olam, make the world a better place. Fix it in the sense of make it better than it was before you got there. And very good. Notice there there's some blurring of the lines.
Did he write this in English?
Yes.
In English?
Yes, I lifted it.
Because it is sort of contradictory.
Interesting. Because I think that tension exists within people who speak about Tikkun Olam, and I think we're going to get into that. It's one of the challenges of, are we trying to reach that goal? In other words, clearly in the Messianic world, it's a metaphor, but the lamb will lie with the lion. So great achievements are made. The question is, as religious Zionists, we believe that you can help bring the redemption closer. A lot of people who believe in Tikkun Olam are not necessarily great believers in Messiah coming in 5 minutes from now, So that I don't know if they're trying to achieve the messianic in this world, but sometimes people think in a very dreamy kind of way. For instance, eradicating poverty, which the Torah speaks of as a messianic ideal. Yes?
I don't think, I think, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't have a question.
Okay.
I think you have to try to reach the ideal, that your goal is towards the ideal. It doesn't mean that you're going to achieve it, but you'll achieve something better than what you've got.
I think with some idealists, you will find that idea that we're trying to actually change the whole world, and that we can do it. Yeah. So, but is it great questions. Okay. So let's get back to that later. You raised some great questions. Moving along, the ubiquitous nature of this concept, meaning the extent. Let's talk about the extent to which this concept is everywhere now. It's part of English. I'm not surprised if it either is or shortly will be an entry in the Webster's Dictionary. Right? Here's some examples. Right? Barack Obama spoke about it to the AIPAC crowd in 2008 when he was running for office. The only time when he comes to speak to us at the AIPAC, when he's running for office. Colonel West said Tikkun Olam all the way. There's a play about it. In this play, someone says, that's the part of Judaism I like, Tikkun Olam. The world is broken into pieces and everyone has to find them and put them back together. Maybe we are the pieces, right? Governor Mario Cuomo, the New York governor, used it when speaking before the New York State Legislature. It's found in New York Times editorials. We'll see some more references later. So it's everywhere. There is now an assumption in the part of the Gentile world that one of the central features of Judaism is Tikkun Olam. So we have to evaluate that assumption. Yes?
In popular culture, it seems that the word Tikkun Olam is just like a Jewish word for like a very common concept of social justice, which is found among the Catholics.
Right. Historically, I don't know about the socialist part, but historically the mantra of liberal Jews, particularly of the Reform movement, used to be, justice, justice, you shall pursue, a verse in Deuteronomy, or what do I want, Micah, what do I want? Only to do justice and walk humbly with God. Emphasis on walking justly, doing justly. And that was, and in English, it was often referred to as social justice. People had social justice committees, and their synagogues were focused on social justice. Later, starting around 1964, the word started to be used, and now we have Tikkun Olam committees instead of social justice committees. Tikkun Olam / social justice committees. It seems like it's a repackaging of the same thing, but it has a grander sweep and grasp and reach than social justice. Social justice means I'm striving for social justice. Tikkun Olam, I'm trying to fix the whole world. There is something different about that. Yeah.
So you would say it's more than just, well, that's what all the Catholics and the Anglicans doing now, so the Jews are also doing that, like sort of like.
All right. So we'll get into critiques of it later, but right. So obviously, so we could say, right. So we're gonna have a special section where we're gonna get into that. But the question Yoel is raising at this point, just to elaborate, is there something uniquely Jewish about it? Is it people have raised questions as to whether it is in that if you define Judaism as primarily this, and then this doesn't have that much distinct from other faiths or other people who would pursue such a goal, then what's distinct about Judaism? But then again, if it's a central tenet, then it's a central tenet. Nothing I can do about it. As Neely said, if other Christians and atheists and communists like to embrace these concepts, all the power to them. Right. So we have to think about this. Okay. Moving along. Sources for Tikkun Olam. Okay. So the expression Tikkun Olam does have roots, more or less, in ancient sources, but we have to evaluate: are the way it's used there, is that similar to the way it's being used over here? So let's take a look. One of the greatest sources that's brought is the Mishnah and Gittin, where various legislation is presented as legislation that's done for Tikkun Olam. So we'd like to read that, the Mishnah and Gittin, chapter 4, Mishnah 2. Obviously appears in the Talmud as well, but it's a Mishnah. Yes.
Okay. At first, a person used to convene a court in another place and cancel it, the get. Rabban Gamliel, the elder, enacted the public interest in plain Tikkun Olam,
Ha'olam, right?
that they should not do so. At first, a person used to change his name and her name, the name of his city and the name of her city. And Rabban Gamliel, the elder, enacted in the public interest in plain Tikkun Olam, that he should write the man so-and-so and every name that he has, the woman so-and-so and every name that she has.
Great. So, yeah, let me elaborate on that. Okay, let me elaborate on that. So, so the Mishnah says that there used to be bitul haget, that people would annul a get. What does that mean? I would send Steve and say, Steve, you're my messenger to send this get to so-and-so. And Steve would have it out there. He would do his job and deliver it to the said woman. And while he was out there, I would convene a bed din of you three guys over here. And I would say, I hereby declare that get, which is in Steve's hand, that is no longer, it's null and void. I changed my mind, it's null and void. So that sounds like, oh, that's wonderful, they're getting back together. No, it's actually a trick. Now the wife goes out and she marries someone else and has kids. And the kids are mamzer and they're bastards. Their mother had a relationship with another man out of wedlock while she was married to me, and therefore the children are mamzerim. So in order to
You being a rabbi would do that? I don't understand why.
okay, you're thinking of me as a rabbi. Think of me as a person.
Just a man.
Just a person. John Smith, hereby hand this document to you to divorce my wife, Mary Jane, over there. Go have a good time, Steve. She lives about 3 days away. Nice to see you. Please do your job.
Okay, I understand
You
that.
go do that while you're away.
I
Yes.
don't understand why you would do that. Doesn't
To
make-
trick her. She thinks she's divorced. Firstly, I might do it because people are fickle about love and they can't decide if they want to get divorced or not. Right. We have a divorce lawyer here. Right. Happens all the time. Right. People change your mind. Right. And that's one possibility, is that they just I loved her so much I changed my mind. That's one possibility.
He would send another message.
But she lives in a different country, and by the time he gets there, the communications are bad. There's no email, there's no internet, no anything, and therefore eventually she goes out and marries someone else. And unbeknownst to me, I never intended to do that. She creates bastards, and the poor kids are stuck. Or I vindictively do this so that she will marry someone else, and then I'll call her children bastards and mamzerim, and they'll be in trouble. They can't marry anyone except for other bastards, etc. So they're in big trouble. They have the scarlet letter. All right?
But a monster
would nullify it.
Oh, they're compassionate. They say, that's wonderful. You don't want to divorce Jane. That's terrific. So as the Beit Din was, so then they said, no. You cannot convene a court in a different place. You can convene it here. Great. Wife is right here in Memphis. You want to convene the court. You don't want to get divorced. Neely, the lawyer, will be happy to provide the services.
A monster
Yeah.
is not a pastor. It's not
Right.
the same.
Right, not the same word.
interpretation.
Here I'm using the word as a woman who's married, then sleeps with someone else and has a child. That child's the
Not
best.
the same.
Right. In America, it would be
Very different.
good.
What does this have to do with Tikkun Olam?
Now, so in public interest, in order so that there shouldn't be bastards running around the world who can't get married, we created this institution that I cannot nullify a get in one place versus I'm not using the word as a curse word. I'm using it as a technical term. So in order to prevent the notion of mamzerim, which means a Jewish type of bastard, whatever the definition we mentioned before, in order to prevent that, the rabbi said no nullification of gets can take place in Memphis for get being delivered in Nashville or certainly in Chattanooga. So why? That will help the world. The world will have less bastards. Then they said that someone would write, instead of saying Joel Finkelstein, I would call myself Yelish, okay? So it says Yelish divorce is Janish, and then later I would claim that, oh no, that's nobody could tell if it was the correct name or not the right name, and so they or I would claim it wasn't a get or what. So to from then on they said, you know what, his name is Joel. Some people call him Yoelish, some people call him Rabbi, some people call him this, some people call him that, and they write 16 different appellations. So Hamachuna, that he's also called this, that, and the other thing, Joey, and this, and every nickname. So that way, someone can't claim, oh, the get wasn't good, they used the wrong name, or that I didn't really divorce her, and all kinds of
Alias this, alias that.
right, exactly, very good. Now, so this is Tikkun Olam. Now, one more case, the case of the ransom. Right, we know that that you shouldn't pay too much for ransom. In other words, if there's usually how you define it is hard to say, but let's say in those days a slave was worth $1,000, so then $500. So if someone kidnaps me, God forbid, you should not pay more than $500. That's the going price, because if you're going to be able to extort millions from me, then they'll capture my brother, my sister, my mother-in-law, because it's good business. So don't spend too much for captives. This Mishnah was raised in the context of Gilad Shalit. Can you give back 1,000 terrorists for one? Maybe they're going to take more terrorists. So no, so the various legal justifications were given that they were able to, or they were not able to get back Gilad Shalit. Anyway, we're all happy he's home. But in any event, this is also the Tikkun Olam for the. You see here the whatever group I copied it from said the wrong thing. Tikkun Olam, no, should have said Tikkun Olam, the fixing of the world. For the fixing of the world, so that people would not encourage more kidnapping, we don't redeem it like that. And another law is mentioned here as well about kidnapping. Is this similar to the modern concept of Tikkun Olam?
No.
Because?
It's a legal concept.
So Tikkun Olam is also a legal concept. I don't know.
Kitchen up.
Yeah.
To make a legal, give this as a how do you call it, an underlying reason to make a legal enactment, and putting a soup kitchen up are two very different things.
Right. So you're just saying intuitively, it seems like dealing with a different type of thing. Let me ask you a more pointed question. Is this outwardly directed? Is this sort of to fix the whole world? The whole world. Is it? Or is it, what is it? What are they really trying to fix?
A situation.
Where? Where's that situation?
In Judaism.
It's a legal problem. It's like the prenuptial agreement. We're trying to fix a problem in Judaism. We like to redeem captives, it's a big mitzvah, but don't get carried away with it. We like people to be able to cancel the get if they need to. We have such a mechanism, but don't abuse it. It's gonna ruin the woman's life. So we're fixing situations in our own legal system. It doesn't seem to have a very wide sweep, right? It doesn't. So the expression appears. Again, it's just a slightly grammatical variation. Tikkun Olam, fixing of the world,
But to the people that it happens to, it's a big thing. If
Right.
It's huge, or if
Right.
somebody, husband.
Right. Okay. Good point.
Miscommunication.
Right.
Then that would be a problem.
So Lisa points out that sure. I mean, a world in which there are less Jewish children who can't get married because their mother was not married to their father. No, because their mother was slept with someone other than their father. That does make the world a better place, But it's very much in the Jewish world. It doesn't really have that. It doesn't have that fourth element of Rabbi Schachter's mandate. Yes.
But if you have enough people
Right.
doing these small things,
Mhm.
everyone does a small thing, it becomes a big thing.
Good. Right. So you
And
could.
it's
Right.
really the only way.
Good.
You could have an organization of 1,000 people
Right.
doing something together, but for the most part, each person doing something on their own is what changes.
Right. So Neely is touching on the same raw nerve that and the same point that Steve raised before. Steve said, "Are we trying to change the whole world and make it absolutely perfect?" And now you're saying, "Well, if one woman is now properly divorced or not divorced, that's one step closer to the whole world." And that they did use that expression "world" because you could say it's because they're parochial and they see their world as the whole world, or you could say, no, they understand that the way a human being approaches the whole world is through the interactions they have with those closest to them.
It also makes our law, like the laws of getting, work more appropriately, and therefore it's a benefit to the Torah because it's working. It's not working against people, it's working for them.
Well, then you're saying it's a fixing of the Torah. Yeah,
Well,
that's where it's takana. Yeah.
But the proper use of the proper.
Okay.
You know, it's going like it should be.
Making things work the way they should. So it doesn't. So the expression is used in the Mishnah and Gittin, again with a slight grammatical variation, but it doesn't seem to have a sweep. But yes, the idea that doing something that has a strong impact on one person's life could have an impact globally is something that is asserted there. Then we have the Aleinu, the second paragraph of Aleinu, which goes back to our Rosh Hashanah davening, which very possibly is very old as the Mishnah, because the Mishnah speaks about Malchios, the Mishnah speaks about a prayer called kingship. Our assumption is that prayer called kingship includes the Aleinu. Aleinu is the introduction to the prayer called kingship. So this is very old. Second paragraph, and we say Al Kain Nekaveh, we hope, right? Lirot Me'erav Tiferu Zacha, to see the splendor of your strength, and we hope for Tikkun Olam b'Malchut Shaddai, right? To fix the world under the reign of the Almighty. So number one, a few scholars have suggested that it shouldn't say Litakein with a kuf, the word that appears in Isaiah. I'm sorry, in Ecclesiastes, fixing. It should be a tikkun with a chaf, Litakein Olam with a chaf, and a chaf, that's mi tikenet ruach Hashem. It's a verse that appears in Isaiah, and it means to, or mikdash Hashem konenu yadecha. It appears in the Torah. It's about establishing. So to establish the world, not to fix the world, but to establish the world. So it could be that particular passage in Aleinu is spelled wrong, and it should be something else. Someone in Bar Ilan suggested that. But in any event, who is supposed to do the fixing? Hashem. The idea of Aleinu is that Hashem fixes the world. So if you're looking for an idea that we are partners in God to fix the world, Mishnah and Gittin, would the Mishnah and Gittin qualify? I think so, yeah. But would the Aleinu qualify? No. The Aleinu is a prayer to God that He should fix the world. But again, it appears there, L'takein Olam, to fix the world.
I don't see the reference to whether it's God fixing the world or people fixing the world.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The reign of God.
Let's go over it in Hebrew. I didn't give you the whole text. Let's see. Therefore, we hope to see the splendor of your glory. To get idolatry out of the land. And to fix the world. To fix. No, we are hoping. We're the ones who are hoping. We hope for you, God.
Where does it say you?
We hope for you. It's a strange expression. When I was looking at it, I was trying to translate it, I was getting a little tongue twisted myself. We hope for you, toward you, from you. Yeah, I don't know how you would translate it, but it's God that we're hoping for you. So again, not perfect. And again, at the end we say the climax of it all is that God will be king over the whole universe. It's a God thing. It's a God thing. Okay. All right, but at least you have the expression there. Okay. Then we have the Zohar. So here I also borrowed from an article from Eugene Korn about Tikkun Olam. So he quotes the verse from Isaiah. Who would like to read the verse from Isaiah and then the comments from the Zohar? Mark, you want to read that for us?
Isaiah, for I am the Lord your God, who stirs up the sea so that the waves roar, and the Lord of hosts is his name. I have put my words in your mouth, and I have covered you in the shadow of my hand, that I may plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth. I say to Zion, you are my people.
In other words, God tells the Jewish people,
Yata, you are my people.
good. Zohar, the mystical work of the Zohar. Go ahead, next paragraph.
Don't read, you are my people, but you are my imi. You are with me. You are my partner, my collaborator. Just as God made heaven and the earth, you must complete heaven. You must complete heaven and earth.
Others will bring this from the Friday night Kiddush, from the verse in Genesis 1 or 2 there, from Vaychulu, that Shebra Elokim la'asot, that God made the world to do. Who's supposed to do it? Us. He stopped. What does it mean he stopped? He stopped on the seventh day for us to take over from there. The idea of partnership, we'll see later, Rabbi Soloveitchik also speaks about it, the idea of partnership with God. So if the idea is to fix the world being God's creation, but we're supposed to fix it, you have this idea, right? What is a bris? What is a bris? No, well, true, but what? Is it right? God makes the body one way, and somehow we're told to sort of fix it, right? So this idea does appear. There are, yes.
Shouldn't the word be you are eating?
Imi is another. Ami and imi. It's a good pun. Both with an ayin. Im, as in im. Imi. You can say imi. So imi. Yeah. Usually we say iti, but you could say imi. Imi. Yeah. It's modern Hebrew doesn't use it as much, I don't think, but it's perfectly legitimate. Yeah. So it's a good pun. Imi. They're not playing with the letters, at least. It kind of works. Okay. Then you have the Ari. Let's see. Maynard, do you want to read about the Ari? The great Rabbi Luria, the great mystic from Tzfat. Let's see what he says.
The application of, what's his name?
Lurianic Kabbalah.
Lurianic Kabbalah to ethnic mitzvah. Social action is particularly striking because Lurianic Kabbalah saw itself as preparing God in the world to come, rather than this world and its social relations.
Oh, so they say, what's the problem? Yes, there's the Lurianic Kabbalah is a very radical thing, that God is sort of God's essence is perfect, and you can't even talk about it. It's incredible. It's beyond description, beyond words. There's no problem with the essence of God, but the way it's manifested in this world is totally broken, and we need to put all those expressions of God in this world back together. In other words, is God's glory manifested in this world? No. When people think the Jews are South Africa, then this world is not. God's people don't have the right reputation in some circles, and therefore God's reputation, His kingship, His splendor is diminished. So that's this world. But he points out that the problem is that yes, the idea of tikkun is very much a central idea in Lurianic Kabbalah, but usually we're trying to fix, we're trying to repair God's image in this world, not repair the world in a physical sense or social interactions. Go ahead.
Well, also Lawrence
Fine also has a big article about this. Go ahead.
Two features of Lurianic Kabbalah that made it applicable to ethnic mitzvah and social action. First, he points out that a generation recovering from the tragedy of the Holocaust is on a race with the image of shattered vessels. Second, both Lurianic Kabbalah and ethnic understanding of Tikkun Olam emphasizes the role of human responsibility and action.
So even though it's from Wikipedia, I thought it was two interesting points that from Lawrence Fine. Number one, why are Jews so receptive to this idea of repairing the world? Because we're a traumatized generation that tends to that is dealing very much with the idea of a broken world. I don't know, it may not be so true. Actually, Tikkun Olam really took off after the Holocaust was waning from Jewish conscience. It's the children. It's this generation who can't even get them to show up to a Yom HaShoah program unless there's an acrobat or a juggler or something. So that generation, I don't think that's a generation that would be most influenced by that. But certainly, looking at it in sort of a multi-generational way, from a broad perspective, I could see that, and we'll get back to that. That the idea of repairing the world, when we know that the Jewish world suffered such a blow, there's a certain resonance there. And then the second idea, he says that there are differences between the Ari's idea and the Tikkun Olam idea in terms of what we're trying to repair, but at least with the idea that we can be a partner in God in playing some cosmic role, right? He thinks we're going to change God's manifestation and expression in this world, right? And we think that we're going to make the world, have less poor people. So,
Change the manifestation.
yeah, as I said before, that God, when the Holocaust happened, the image of God in this world, since we are His people, and everyone knows that, the image of God in this world in the Torah was in the dumps. The idea of Isaiah, the idea of prophecy, of chosenness, that was in the dumps. So everything we do, whether it's being more Jewish, helping the state of Israel, helping our Jewish communities, it's to increase the image of the Jew such that the image of God in this world rises. Kiddush Hashem. Okay, so, yes.
Not to be artful.
Go ahead.
But,
Go ahead.
we're in a Kabbalah that explains doing the mitzvahs. I mean, he takes the metaphor, he takes the
Definitely.
language of Lurena Kabbalah. Lurena Kabbalah believes that by doing the mitzvahs, by making blessings,
Yes, good.
doing halacha,
Good.
you rectify
Right.
spiritual damage in the world.
Right, you have to do right. You
Might include social justice, but itself is not a proof for social justice.
Yes, I once said at a forum, and Rabbi Danziger from the Temple agreed with me, that making Kiddush also repairs the world, right? When you make Kiddush on wine, so why using wine? Because the first fruit that Adam and Eve ate was a grape. That's one theory. So I'm now, on Friday night, which was the time of the, right after the first sin was on Friday afternoon, so the time of the original sin, I am going and having a wine or grape juice to fix the damage that was done by the first eating of the first fruit. So that's a classic idea. You're doing a mitzvah, as Yoel says, and that mitzvah fixes a problem in the history of the world. So that's classic. But if you're working in a soup kitchen and it's some sort of tzedakah, and there was a problem in the world of lack of tzedakah, then that works. But if somehow what you're doing, and clearly Tikkun Olam has been used sometimes for goals that we would question. I don't know. Let's say you might say if we can have better, more access to abortions, then we're going to do Tikkun Olam. Which again, there's some times when Jewish law might allow abortions, and sometimes it might not. But if you're doing it in a case when it might not, then clearly, according to the Ari, you would not be fixing the world if you're doing an abortion that's not condoned by the Torah. That would not be Tikkun Olam. So. Clearly it has to be through a mitzvah. But as you all said, chesed, kindness, is a mitzvah. And that's one of the questions we have to raise. Why are we looking for these new expressions of fixing the whole world? We have an expression called tzedakah, chesed, kindness, I don't know, haftal re'acha kamocha, love your neighbor. We have so many expressions that do work. Why are we trying to go to another expression? Yes? Oh, we'll get to that, yes.
And it seems like you don't typically, when you know you have to change something, you don't start on the outside. You don't start to do that. You have to only,
right.
However the family's running, maybe you look at yourself and you start to work on yourself, and then,
Lisa reminds us of the famous rabbi, I don't know if it's Rav Zusha or who it is, but they always quote somebody who said that, right? First, I was going to change the whole world. Then I decided to change my city. Then I decided to change my shul. Then I decided to change myself, right? But, right, so really you should go the other way. You should start the other way. Right, so that's one of the critiques of Tikkun Olam is it's overly outward oriented when a lot of work has to start inside. But again, who's going to argue with feeding the poor? But let's continue. Rabbi J.J. Schachter quotes from someone that I think he says that he got this from another scholar. But in any event, Rabbi Azaria Fano, a more obscure commentator on the book of Jonah, that the book of Jonah ends, Jonah says, what am I doing? Tikkun Olam, it's not my job, to fix Nineveh, the Assyrians. I'm really not interested in Assyrians, whether they want to do tshuva or not, or how many mitzvahs they're doing in Assyria. It's just not my thing. I mean, I want to help the Jews. I'm not really into this. just take my life. I'm washed up. I don't want to be here. If that's my job, to help the enemies of the Jews. It's like help Hezbollah, so they should have better health care. Something. It's not my thing. Take my life. So God says, but there's so many people and a lot of animals, and the book ends. So Rafano says, Menachem Rafano, he says, yeah, what God is saying is, if you have a lot of Gentiles, that's very important. In other words, you may say, I want to help my brother. Yeah, but if there's a lot of Gentiles in need, you got to deal with that. So one person locally here is very involved with Tikkun Olam. He said, hey, I could help thousands of people in Africa with $500. So that's but if I give $500 to Yeshiva University, they can only help to 1/20th of a tuition for one student. But $500 in Nigeria, that can go far. It's a lot of wheat for many weeks for many people. So the numbers, there's a drive today in this more global world where you can fly. If you can afford it, you can take a summer, put it on your resume, and go to Nigeria or someplace, and there's a lot of people you could help. Whereas Ayafano says numbers make a difference. If you can help a lot of people, maybe that's part of the mandate. But it's sort of an offbeat point. Let's get back. You have Rabbi Salvejik. Who would like to read that? Lisa, have you read for us? Page 3.
The peak of religious, ethical perfection to which Judaism aspires is man as creator. When God created the world, He provided an opportunity for the work of His hand, man, to participate in His creation. The Creator, as it were, impaired reality in order that mortal man repair its flaws and perfect it.
I mean, he seems to be swallowing the whole idea of Tikkun Olam, lock, stock, and barrel. Rabbi Salvejik, a halachic man, was written in the 50s, I think. But in other words, that when it says in Genesis, which is one of his central verses of his philosophical writings, it says in Genesis that man should subdue the earth and rule over the fish and the fowl and all that. That it's a mandate to be godlike, to participate in being partners in the world. So you have Rabbi Salvejik using that. He doesn't use the expression Tikkun Olam, but talking about the idea of partnership and man as creator, fixer of the world. Good. Just two more. I forget why I put this in this particular juncture of the shiur, but two more reflections on modern usage of Tikkun Olam. Steve, why don't you just read that little a man reflecting on his father. Yeah.
As a Jew in his 84th year, he has lived a life that has given concrete expression to two major Jewish values: modesty and the obligation to perform Tikkun Olam, to heal the world.
Here's just an example of just someplace I happened to find a reference to it online of a lot of people would say, a central Jewish value, right? So that's what we're here to evaluate, and let's evaluate it particularly in Barack Obama's words, because he didn't make this up. He has good Jewish speechwriters, advisors, and they told him this was an appropriate paragraph. Listen to this. And I'm not here to pick on him or anything. It's not the point. But the point is just, let's see what he asserts. So, Mark, did you want to read that for us?
Sure. As an Israeli will tell you, Israel is not a perfect place, but like the United States, it sets an example for all when it seeks a more perfect future. These same qualities can be found among American Jews. It is why so many Jewish Americans have stood by Israel while advancing the American story, because there is a commitment embedded in the Jewish faith and tradition to freedom and fairness, to social justice and equal opportunity. Tikkun Olam, the obligation to this world.
Right. So notice that it's an obligation, and it's embedded in the Jewish faith. I think you agree with me. I think he's describing it as a central principle. You have social justice comes in there. He knows that's an old catchword. And equal. What does it say?
Equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity. Right. That would be a separate class. That's part of Judaism. And right, equality. and Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. So we've seen a little bit about the term. Is the use of the word Tikkun Olam an aberration of the original usage of the term? What do you say? Based on what we've said so far, what do you say?
No.
Okay. Say no. Why not?
It's obligation of anyone that can that fits the word.
Yeah, but we saw it in the Mishnah and Gittin and in the Aleinu and in Lurian and Ari, and in each case it wasn't quite what we'd expected. So it's a bit off, but
Seems like a generalization of what was there in those sources.
Okay, good. So again, someone pointed out that. So what? So the expression is not exactly the expression originally was. It reflects some values that are in Judaism. Period. Okay, so let's try to go with that for a little bit and see if we can agree to that or not. Yes.
We say it's Jewish values, but it seems like it would be a value of any.
Oh, is it a Jewish value? Right. Again, the fact that other people. Right, there aren't that many values, so that I don't know if we're always looking for unique Jewish values. I'm going to argue something that sometimes I argue the opposite of this, but let me play the devil's advocate here. We're always looking for unique Jewish values. Someone argued that there aren't that many values. There's love, there's kindness, there's modesty, there's humility, there's I don't know what else is there. Kindness, charity, faith, truth. These are the values, and we're not necessarily going to find unique Jewish ones. The balance you'll find is different. I think in different cultures you find different. For instance, truth is not the top of our priority list. In America, it's very, very high. Truth Commission, all kinds of things. In Judaism, there are a lot of other things that come. Peace comes before truth. So Rabbi Lichtenstein spoke about that it's important to know what your values are, but even more important to know what the relationship between one value and the other is. And that's going to be our key question tonight. If it is an important value, where does it play? What role does it play? Where does it fit in? But we've got to get moving. Let's see. All right, the problem. So since we're running behind time, I won't read the whole thing. But Hillel Halkin is a huge conservative kind of a guy, and he writes for Commentary, which is a huge conservative kind of a journal, and very, very Jewishly inclined journal, but very, very conservative.
Conservative Jewish or conservative politically?
No, politically. So he turns out articles like crazy. He's a very prolific fellow. It's always interesting. Anyway, so he says he calls it self-indulgent. In other words, I'm going to fix the world type of thing. And then he says that some people treat Jewish tradition not as a body of teachings to be learned from, but one needing to be taught about what it is about by those who know better than it does what it should be about. So this is, in other words, the very fact that this term is manufactured, the term Tikkun Olam is manufactured, tweaked from its original, could be a reflection of a modern tendency to decide what is an important value, and then try to read it back into Judaism, and then redefine all of Judaism based on your reading back of the previous one. So we have to be aware of this warning that Hillel Halkin is making. Again, if it's a value, it's inside Judaism. So what's the problem? But anyway, then he says also repairing. Then he points out something I think is a more astute comment. The last comment: repairing almost anything can involve breaking something else. For instance, want to give me an example in terms of social action? An example of social action where you repair one thing, break something else.
What do you mean?
Oh, you're asking us. I thought you said you were going to.
I'm sorry, I was going to, but I decided to ask you.
Yeah, when you have social justice, when you're giving things to poor people, you're taking them away from rich people. That's what a lot of people argue.
Okay. I work hard for my money. You decide you're going to take 40, 50% of my income. Right.
To the lazy, no good.
But I can't cry too much for the rich guy. I don't know. Give me another one. Go ahead.
So if I'm getting paid more to stay at home than I am getting paid for a menial job, then I'm going to stay home. So
Right.
You're taking my drive, my need to go out and provide for my own family in a situation, or my motivation to get up and do something.
I was talking to someone sitting next to me at the APAC convention who was very, could tell from her clapping that she was very anti-liberal, and she said that she used to be liberal, brought up liberal, And what turned her off was the idea was working in a school system and seeing how all the social programs designed to help poor people were the cause of all the problems of all her children who were, So there can be abuses. Right? You go on Peace Corps, and instead of helping the people in Nigeria, the people get the impression, oh, the people who can do something are the white people who come from America, but we're doomed because we're stupid. There can be that I've had it working with Ethiopians. Some people have it working with the African American community in America. There can be a lot of problems like that, right? The NCAA doesn't necessarily want to have a white president. Not the NCAA, the NAACP doesn't necessarily want to have a white president. He said, "What do you mean? I'm trying to, and I'll give you a lot of donations. I'll help your organization. What's the problem?" Trying to help other people instead when they should be helping themselves. It's not always helpful. So I'm not necessarily endorsing that position. You can argue. I don't have all the answers of whether the liberal or the conservative approach is correct, but clearly this is a truism that when you repair one thing, you might break something else. Some people, even some Reform rabbis have criticized. For instance, Arnold Jacob Wolf passed away recently. He said that sometimes it's a half-understood concept. It becomes a huge umbrella under which our petty moral concerns and political panaceas come in out of the rain. Meaning, right? In other words, you can say anything's Tikkun Olam if it has no definition. So then every cause I want to have. Obviously, as traditional Jews, we're going to have to check whatever we want to claim is Tikkun Olam, make sure it's kosher first. So, in any event, Yehuda Mirsky, who's a very clever fellow, old acquaintance of mine, he's quoted in Levi Cooper, who has a wonderful article about Tikkun Olam. He says, right, is there a distinctively Jewish way of doing humanitarian work? He's upset. Like some of you, he's saying, if it's humanitarian aid work, so I call it humanitarian aid work. What's this Tikkun Olam? Are you doing? Is something particularly Jewish about it? But maybe it is. Maybe when Jews heal the world, maybe that's Jewish. When a Jewish group goes to Guatemala, then it's Jews repairing the world. That's what Jews are supposed to do. So maybe that's the Jewish because they're Jewish. I don't know. But it's a question you raised. Yes.
Just because something is universal doesn't make it less Jewish. Like, do not kill is very universal, but that's still a Jewish commandment.
Right. So we said that these are types of questions, but is it okay if it's not unique to Jews? And maybe it is, but these are questions that have been raised. Okay, now moving along. Why is it not emphasized in traditional sources? In other words, even if we can find a Mishnah here, a verse there, how come all of a sudden we're talking about repairing the whole world? But I don't know, when I went to the third grade, nobody talked about repairing the world. When I was learning Bava Metzia, one was talking about repairing the whole world. And all of a sudden, everyone's talking about the central tenet of Judaism is to repair the whole world. Did I miss something? Right? Why isn't that the essence of our Orthodox education? Or even, what are we missing here? What's the disconnect between this new concept, which yes has some roots in Judaism, but now all of a sudden is claiming to be a central tenet in Judaism? And Judaism, as I know it, where it doesn't seem to be a central tenet. Yes?
We repair the world by being an example for other people to follow.
Good.
The kingdom of priest and holiness.
Right. So many people point out that this idea of being an example is different from Tikkun Olam. Right. That you might say, well, what do you mean? If by being an example, I can be an example to the whole world, as we'll see in sources later, then it seems that it's an old Jewish concept. So we say, no, but the idea was, I do my thing as a Jew, or I do my thing as Israel as a nation, and that has ripple effect to the whole world who looks and says, hey, Korea says, hey, why don't we study Talmud? Makes them smart, let's study some Talmud, right? Japan may say, oh, look, they're doing a lot of incubator stuff and doing a lot of technology and saving lives. Let's do that too. Why don't we go to Haiti and save some people when they're maybe Iran will be inspired to send somebody to Haiti next time there's a crisis over there. So usually, so there's a difference between doing what you do in your community and rippling out to other communities, or getting on a plane and going somewhere else.
Wow, this is a very modern Orthodox concept.
Of what?
I would think that some Haredi type Jews would stay within their own environment. It's not our problem. As a matter of fact, I once heard a rabbi say that about the racial problem. It's not our problem.
Right. So
I'm playing devil's advocate.
yes, there was just reading the Jewish Week. Joe Lieberman, who was a former senator and all that, he gave a lecture recently at the Jewish Center on behalf of Federation, Jewish Center in Manhattan, and he said that 500 people were there, and he was saying that it's a shame Orthodox people are not involved enough in the world, and Tikkun Olam and things like that. So there is a perception like that, and that's part of why we're discussing it tonight. How do we fit in? It's really a concept that's been developed mostly outside of the Orthodox realm. There has been a major journal that came out from the Orthodox Forum about Tikkun Olam, but and YU is certainly doing a lot of Tikkun Olam type project these days. They're going to Central America and winter break and summertime and helping with different projects and house building and all kinds of stuff. And there's certainly synagogues, Orthodox synagogues, that are getting involved in this. But that's one of the questions tonight. How do we fit in as Orthodox Jews in this concept? Is it more of a liberal concept? Is it just social justice repackaged? Is it a central tenet? That's part of our question. Yes, Lisa.
Okay, so you were saying like this is something recent. Well, now the technology, we can see what's going on in other parts of the country and what's going on. Back when, I mean, like you're saying in traditional sources, there wasn't. They stayed in their own area. Or they were moved to another area. They had to leave, but it wasn't like people maybe feel closer. Like the world seems closer now. We all.
Excellent.
What's going on a little bit.
Excellent. Hold on 1 second. I'm just having a slight technical problem. I mistaken. I pressed the button.
I also want to press people.
Could you see? Could you just see if we could get this? Sorry. Okay. So Lisa makes a very important point. That right has the world changed with the internet, with cheaper air travel. The world changed so that suddenly a problem in Somalia, I once upon a time I would read about it in the newspaper 3 days late. Now I'm reading about it in real time. Thanks. And now I'm reading about it in real time. Thank you. I'm reading about it in real time, and I know there's a tsunami hit over here and the Haiti crisis over there.
You try to help people too.
Right, and all of a sudden you put it on Facebook and before, right. So the question is, does that change my moral reality? Putting it in Jewish terms, if we know that the poor of your city come before the poor of another city, when we suddenly know more about the people halfway around the globe or all the way around the globe, does that change who the people of your city are or not? It's an interesting question. We got to move on. Now, so we say, why isn't that emphasized in traditional sources? So first I look over here, and based on Genesis, I want to say the following. We know that Abraham's first mandate was, Lech lecha, go, leave your country. Okay, that has nothing to do with Tikkun Olam per se. Okay. Second verse, he's going to make me a great nation, make your name great. He's going to be a blessing. Okay, also very nice. But verse 3 is that his third mandate was, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Through you, all the earth will be blessed. So there is an idea that through you, the earth will be blessed. But as Charles just pointed out, what does it mean, through you? You're right. You do your thing, and the earth will be blessed. But was Abraham internally focused or externally?
Both.
Right. He was worried about Isaac, but he's also worried about Sodom. As we see in the next paragraph, Hashem says, I got to tell Abraham what I'm doing. I'm going to destroy Sodom. I got to tell him about it. A parochial reading is, I'm going to destroy part of Israel. I got to tell him about it. I'm about to destroy part of Israel. I have to consult with Abraham. It's his land. A global reading is, I'm doing something in this world. Let me tell Abraham. Maybe he'll pray for it. Maybe he can solve it. Abraham's interested in even the wicked. Who could be farther from his concern? The wicked people. Abraham is concerned, shall the judge of the earth not do justly? He's worried about the world. Now, so we look at this and we say, well, maybe it is emphasized. So we say, well, maybe we just missed it. There it is. The earth will be blessed through Abraham. So we said, no, it's not exactly like Tikkun Olam, because that means do your own thing, and then the blessing will flow out. We said, what do you mean? It is right there. It's right there. Abraham was trying to change the whole world. But then you say, well, but look what happened to Jacob. Jacob wasn't focused on the whole world. So did something happen between Abraham and Jacob? Abraham focused on the whole world. He's the father of many nations. And Jacob, are we more of the Jacob model, focused more internally? But surely there's some eyebrow raising there that there's some external focus in our very first mandate. And that Abraham does seem to have an interest that's very far and wide. And secondly, aside from the mandate at the beginning of our history, our mandate for the end of our history, as outlined in Isaiah, is that we should be a light unto the nations, as it says here in Isaiah 42. We should be an aid lumim, we should be a testimony to the nations. There is a concept of the nations, or that many nations will go to our light, or that many nations will grab our tails, and they'll Kimi Tzion Tetzei Torah, that Torah will come forth from Jerusalem. The problem with using this as a source is, as Steve pointed out before, what? What's the problem with this? You see, Isaiah says that our job is to be a light unto the nation, so surely I should be outwardly focused. What's the problem? Your community comes first. What else? When is this talking about?
Oh, this is the end of days?
End of days. So this is the problem. We clearly know that Judaism is interested in the world as an end of days vision. The question is, what do we do in these days when we're not there yet? We're not at the end of days. Are we already mandated to start focusing on the world around us? Or is our job to do our own job first and then go in that direction? Okay. So on the one hand, you could turn to the beginning of our history, Abraham's first mandate, and see some sort of universal trend. You can look at our eschatological vision of the future and say that there is something about the world. But you could also say that that's for Mashiach to do. It's for the end of days, not for this world. So two reasons it's not emphasized in Jewish literature. Another thing. Our nation is supposed to be bring a blessing to all the nations. Our nation is supposed to be a light unto the nations. The question is, when I go and volunteer in my local soup kitchen, and as a major to be a light unto the nations, it could be that this is a vision not for the individual, but for the nation. And that's what Israel is doing today. When Israel does its own thing today, it resonates out in the world. I was just at the APAC convention. They focused and highlighted the things that Israel is doing, like giving a person a pair of glasses, so that even though they can't read, now the glasses will read it to them and speak into their cheek, tell them what it says on the. They can go to the supermarket and they can shop because they have a new pair of glasses. So
the glasses.
They have special glasses with a camera. The camera looks at the thing, reads it, tells it into your ear, and then you're all set. They can read the newspaper. Everybody, yeah. There are gizmos like that, but this one is portable, so you can take it to the supermarket. Yeah. You can read in your bed. You don't. Anyway, so when it could be that as a state of Israel, as a people, we can have that sort of impact, but it doesn't mean that necessarily I just do my thing, and perhaps as a nation, it resonates outside. Now, again, we have to say to ourselves the following: if it's not a central principle, then why not? So one idea is that the poor of your city come first. We have this Gemara above Mitzvah 71a, that the poor of your city come first. So although I maybe want to be globally oriented, but the poor of my city come first. What am I supposed to do? I want to help people in Somalia, but I have an obligation to my people first. A wonderful example is the following. No country devotes an equal amount of its budget to outside as inside. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So why not? America has billions of dollars, we have a multi-trillion-dollar budget, and the people are starving in Somalia. It's not right. And I said, no, it's not. That's not a moral problem. Well, most people would say, if they're not universalists, would say that is not a moral problem that we have $1 trillion budget and people are starving in Somalia. It's not a moral problem because it's a country's obligation to take care of its country. Now, if you believe in a borderless world, then that would be correct, that we should take the money from here but give it over there. But in a world in which there are such things as families, marriages, countries, states, and cities, congregations, there is a concept that you help, if people in my own congregation don't have money, that is my first responsibility. Then I have to worry about people in other congregations. That's the way things work. The border, there are some moral obligations that we don't impose beyond the border, like universal health care, right? No one's going to say we should have universal health care for the whole universe, right? There is something called a country. But again, many globalists who are thinking in terms of Tikkun Olam have trouble with this concept because they don't really get that idea of a country. They're not sure that they fully accept this idea of the moral obligation lessening when you leave your door. I'm not saying that America has no obligation toward the world, but it's less. Other issues with this term. Number one, well, let's skip that for a moment. But let's just talk about the following. Rabbi J.J. Schechter points out that although this concept may not be rooted in the expression Tikkun Olam, it can be rooted in other expressions. For instance, when Maimonides, the Rambam, writes in Laws of Kings 10:12 that we were told to bury the sick among the Gentiles, to bury their dead, to visit their sick, to maintain their poor as well as our poor, in the interests of peace. So you could say, it's self-serving. You know why we help the poor of the Gentiles? Because we want them to help our, if we don't help their Gentiles, they won't help our Jews. But
now if you read the two
right,
quotes after,
but he quotes two verses which make it seem much more sincere. He says, much more altruistic. The Lord is good to all, and His mercy is on all of His works. Now, to be fair, this concept is often used for our compassion for animals, but it works. By using this concept, we have mercy on all His works. So if somebody's starving, somebody had a tsunami, you've got to help them. God has mercy on all His works. If God has mercy on animals, He certainly has mercy on people. You've got to do it. The last verse in Jonah, how could you not worry about so many people? It's also written, all the ways are pleasantness and all the paths are peace. That's different. That's saying the essence of Torah is peace. It's not that I'm trying to make peace so that He won't make war with me or that He won't make a pogrom against me. I'm trying to make peace because it's one of my fundamental values. So the value of peace, the value of mercy, God, trying to be like God, these are the fundamental core values which one can argue Tikkun Olam is traditionally based on, not on the concept of Tikkun Olam qua the expression Tikkun Olam, but in these expressions, Darkei Shalom, in the deepest sense, Kol Tivotei Shalom, the idea of the whole Torah being peace, Rachamav Kol Masav, from the Ashrei, that God's mercy is on everyone. Then we have to ask ourselves another question. Let's say there's no such ethic as repairing the world. Let's say phony expression, people made it up 50 years ago. But Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein raises the point. There could be ethics outside the halakha. There could be, even if you can't find a source, it still might be a nice thing to do. You have a way of helping people who are starving someplace? Go for it, do it. So that's another sort of out-of-the-box kind of way of thinking about it. Then we have to ask another Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein type of question. And we're getting toward the end. He said, as I said before, he said, it's very nice to teach values to children. We have to teach them the priority of values. So if this is a value, what are the priorities? So this fellow online, David Carasso, has a very extreme kind of a website, but he made the following, he laid out very nicely the Jewish laws on prioritization. So firstly, you have to help your own parents. You have to help your children. You have to help your brothers. Then you have to help other relatives. You have to help your neighbors. You have to help the locals, then the other non-locals. Then you have to, the poor of Jerusalem have precedence of people over other people in Israel. The people in Israel are considered like the people of your city. So we have to know these Jewish priority values that are found in the Code of Jewish Law regarding, in your day, regarding tzedakah and charity. So after you go through all that, there is room, as the Rambam says, we give charity to the poor of the Gentiles among the Jews. But there is a prioritization here, so surely in percentages, that should be, presumably, it should be reflected as well. There's a nice passage here from Rav Kook, you can read it at home, where he does also seem to say that there are two elements of Judaism, and we have to be we have the internal and the external. We need to be more sensitive to the external. I have a passage here from Elie Wiesel, which is a good way to sort of get to the end of our point, and that is that as post-Holocaust Jews, it's very hard for us to say that you should not be involved in world affairs. We very often complain. We have an inner bitterness about the complacency of the world, including our own community, to what happened in the Holocaust, and we are somehow indignant to the fact that America didn't intervene more, and indignant that people stood by, and all this, and yet sometimes we find ourselves just as apathetic when always, yes, it's very depressing when we used to say never again, and then thank God there's never been another Holocaust at that level, but there have been plenty of massacres and part genocides and all sorts of crises, and as a person of modest means, it's not that much I can do for a tsunami either, right? I can send them $10, some $100, but there's a limit to what I can do.
The Syria now, I mean, the whole world is in chaos.
Yes.
The entire world is in total chaos.
Yes. Someone pointed out at the APAC convention, there is no Syria. There is no Syria.
I've lived long enough to see, other than I believe, from the time of the Holocaust, and of course my immediate concern because of wars on Israel, you take that your own first.
Yes.
Other than that, though, I think the world is now in greater chaos than it has ever been.
Yeah, well, this week is particularly chaotic, yes, with the Ukrainian situation.
Well, the Syrian situation,
yes.
the Egyptian situation,
yeah,
Rwanda, there's no place in the world.
What we're seeing in the Middle East is a collapse of several states no longer exist. This fellow said there's no such thing as Lebanon, certainly Syria and Iraq. They do not exist as one might imagine them. They don't actually exist. But anyway, finally, Rabbi Lichtenstein, who would like to read that for us? I think this kind of sums up a lot of what we want to say right here. Who would like to read that for us? Maynard, would you read that? It's a little blurry, but...
It's a lot blurry.
Blurry, I got my glasses.
Let's see. Okay. There is a perception that intensive ethnocentric chesed is preferred to bland universalism. Yet, second line, yet the tendency.
Yet the tendency prevailing in much of the contemporary Torah world in Israel as well as in this diaspora of almost total
obliviousness
to non-Jewish suffering is shameful, deplorable.
All right, so Rabbi Lichtenstein said in a journal edited by Rabbi Shalom Karmi that it's deplorable to have obliviousness to suffering. Go ahead.
Surely Abraham Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu felt and acted otherwise. They intervened.
Matan Torah.
Matan Torah is not change obligations in this respect.
Right, just because the Torah was given doesn't mean we should only focus on ourselves. Go ahead.
Priorities certainly need to be maintained as regards both practical and emotional engagement.
Okay, so here Rabbi Lichtenstein always gives you the full hems and haws. On the one hand, he thinks it's deplorable to only focus on our own suffering. At the same time, he believes that priorities need to be maintained. Emotionally, we should be more engaged. A person should naturally feel worse when their brother dies than when a stranger dies. And similarly, with regard to dealing with social ills. And also, practically speaking, we need to help our brethren more than others. It's a disgrace. If a fellow Jew is starving, that is a direct disgrace to me. If someone is starving in Somalia, it's a disgrace to the Somalian people, it's a disgrace to Africa, and it's a disgrace to America, and finally it's a disgrace to me. So there's a little more removed. So there is a question of priorities, but go ahead.
But between that and
complacent apathy
allows an emotional moral gap.
Right. There's a tremendous gap. In other words, people want to claim, well, I don't believe in Tikkun Olam, because the expression is phony, so therefore I'm totally complacent to the suffering in the whole world. And there's a long way from having problems with Tikkun Olam as a focus and doing nothing and not caring. Go ahead.
But the of the only Jewish afflictions is where the Jewish response needs to be exonerated.
Excoriated and eradicated.
In this respect, the
Chavetz Chaim's remark.
If the Gentiles do much, we pray for them on Rosh Hashanah. They would
Machzorim.
Serves an instructed guide.
I'm not sure exactly what he means, but in other words, we're always praying for the Gentiles. The Rosh Hashanah, everything. Much of what we're about, the Beit HaMikdash used to do great things for the world. Everything we do in mitzvahs. So here's the problem. We've said that linguistically, there's a slight problem with the word Tikkun Olam. It should be Tikkun Olam. Okay, fine. We've said that the expression as used previously, the word Tikkun Olam, as appears in earlier sources, well, not exactly the way it's being used today. Okay, fine. Then we said that you can certainly, within the concepts of shalom and darkei shalom and the idea of imitatio Dei, of imitating God, the idea that God's mercy is on all His creatures and we should also have mercy on all the creatures. Within these concepts, you can find legitimate roots for the notion of being more engaged in the world. Certainly it's a messianic concept. Certainly Avram Avinu was engaged in it. Whether that means that to what extent we need to be engaged today is somewhat murky, but obviously as a concept of helping others while helping our own first, but also helping others, it's a basic mandate of tzedakah to do so. And when there is a great need, like in the end of Jonah, where the entire city, entire countries are in great need, I think we have to take pause. We should certainly have some emotional investment in suffering that takes place wherever it takes place. At the same time, the grandiosity and the scope of Tikkun Olam, that a person is going to fix the whole world, or that somehow by getting on an airplane and going somewhere else, you're doing more Tikkun Olam than helping your kid read at night, is sometimes a distortion. So it may be part of a narcissistic sense today that since we can tweet with people in Africa, therefore somehow we all become one global community. I still believe in nations. I don't think we live in a post-national world, and I think we still have more obligations to our own people. But we can't be completely complacent. There are projects, things that can be done in our community, and we can certainly get behind that. Exactly how to find that balance, how many soup kitchens, how many homes to raise, how many projects, how many trips to different countries to engage in these types of things. Should we be making other trips to impoverished parts of Israel or other impoverished Jewish communities? Again, the embarrassment of poverty in our own community is the worst shame on us. And we do have our own issues. I know many people feel like our issues are more dealt with and they want to help people in other communities. I don't know. I mean, I certainly wouldn't say that about your family, right? You wouldn't say, look, my kids, they have nice parents, but I'll go help somebody else's family. I think to some degree, you have to, we need to take responsibility for our own people, and we don't have to be ashamed that we help our people. I think people use it as a model. People will sometimes say, let's be like the Jews, let's take care of our own people. And to the extent that can be true and ring true, we can help others as well. And we spoke about the idea that sometimes we can model, by doing it internally, can model what needs to be done by others, and that can serve as the most empowering to others to do as we do. When we help other people learn how to do drip irrigation on their own farms and then we leave, can be much better than coming in for summer and feeling good and putting it on your resume. But in any event, it is a new world. It's a smaller world. We're still struggling with this, and the Orthodox community has to find our place within this new world and figure out how we can play a role, and to what extent we want to get on this global bandwagon of the idea that we can fix the whole world, and we have to be a little bit cautious that we don't lose sight of the Lurianic concept or the Ari concept, Hakadosh, that it's through ritual as well, we can also repair the world. That when you get carried away with the idea of Tikkun Olam, you can begin to say, small stuff like Shabbos, Kashrus, prayers, that's small stuff. I'm going to go save the world. And we have to remember that according to the ASBEE, Shabbos, Kashrus, Kiddush, sitting in a sukkah also saves the world too. It makes the world a whole different place. But in any event, that's our discussion for Tikkun Olam, and that concludes our 4-part series. We hope to gather together again, once again, in May for some more Dumont University. We welcome topics. People have ideas, things you'd like to hear discussed, types of formats or what. We're open, and please be in touch. Thank you.